For next week, we'll be doing what's called a poster study. In fact, we'll be doing 2 poster studies. And they're not true to form old master copies. What they are is very simplified versions. The assignment directly after that is actually a faithful old master copy, but it will be simply a detail, so we'll be able to actually complete it in the time that we have. Oh, we gotta get rid of that. So in the 18th and 19th centuries, after students had completed the rigorous coursework at the École des Beaux-Arts, which is the very first art school, and any other European art school, they were generally sent off to copy masterworks. Now here's the thing. When you actually went to an atelier or an academy, you didn't actually paint. You learned how to draw. So for those 3 years, you weren't dealing with color. And if you were dealing with color, it was in the form of chalk, usually like sepia chalk, maybe ink. So you would have spent a year on your own or several years on your own actually working in museums doing faithful reproductions in order to learn color, in order to learn how to move that painting around. So John Singer Sargent, Anders Zorn, Joaquin Sorolla, all went to Madrid to copy Velázquez, and John Singer Sargent, the American, who wasn't really American, carried his copies with him his entire life. So most artists have spent time copying other artists. You learn a lot. Why would you want to make copies? You're going to want to think about understanding the thought process in constructing an image. So all the ideas relating to design, composition, color, edge treatment, technique, those have all been made and you will learn greatly from them. So I refer to this as reverse engineering. You're kind of taking steps backwards to understand the logic that someone who was greatly successful implemented. You're going to want to think about cementing your insights. So you can read all you want about artists, but to actually retain the information, you need to be doing it. Almost all of you are visual learners, but you're also kinetic or kinesthetic learners, meaning you have to do the thing with your body in order to remember it, right? And I found that very true for art majors. Also to just simply get inspired. It's hard to maintain a kind of sense of inspiration. And the way that we oftentimes do that is to look at art history, not only because they teach us not to reinvent the wheel, but they move us in ways that have resonated throughout the eras, throughout time. So some tips: don't just copy spot for spot, try to reason out the process. What did the artist do first? As in, if the painting is of a landscape, did they work the background first and then incrementally move forward? Decide what you're trying to learn from the piece and focus on that. So an example, if you're trying to understand Joaquin Sorolla's use of color and his temperature in color, don't get hung up on the drawing, okay? Remember, the goal is not to make a forgery. It is to understand the master's thought process. And when I say a poster study, what I'm referring to is essentially a blunt amalgamation of the image. It's not a true facsimile. It is overall a looser representation of the original itself. This image in particular is going to be about color and composition, not the details of the angel, right? The angel is very, very bluntly described. So if we're looking at a Boucher image from the 19th century, a poster study of that image, we see all the details in the satin, we see all the details even in the wallpaper. What we're actually looking at is a deconstruction of the planes, the color, and essentially the composition. So if we move back and forth, you kind of get what I'm getting at here. An Ingres painting, I-N-G-R-E-S, and then a deconstruction of essentially the light components, the temperature components, and the composition. A Velázquez painting, the Toilette of Venus. Very, very famous. What is it about? It's about the color, it's about the shapes, and it's about the composition. You can do little details. But the thing is if you do a detail, you kind of miss out on the orientation of a composition. Then it becomes about detail. It becomes about the eye, right? That's not necessarily the assignment, although this is indeed a poster study of a detail of a masterwork. A Titian image, and then it's poster study. So they can be fairly loose, and they can be painted in a way that is very economical, that is very much oriented towards simplification, okay? And they can retain a sense of beauty. You can get into, essentially observing three distinctive values, blunt color with some transitions rather than completely flat. I'm not looking for completely flat. And a true, faithful understanding of the compositional decisions that the artist made. So we're looking at a Eugene Delacroix of Dante's Inferno, Down in Hell. And then we see a really beautiful poster study. So lots of artists do this. Lots of artists have done this throughout time. And we see an old master at a 17th century Dutch still life. And then we see Matisse copying it when he was younger. So the original, Matisse, and then Matisse finds his style. He really gets into his personal expression, and down the line, years and years later, he does another one. So you see how this can aid in a kind of conversation with art history, but ultimately, it will allow you a springboard to create your own work. A lot of assignments that I ask students to do is in the style of another artist. That's because you're wearing their hat. And you're wearing their hat in such a way that will inform what it is you like and don't like about painting, what you're good at, what your strengths are, and what your weaknesses are. These can be fairly loose. Here we have a Rembrandt self-portrait, right? And what this is essentially about composition and drawing. I think this artist probably should have focused a little bit more on light, since Rembrandt is known for his chiaroscuro, right? And then we have another Titian, a Bacchus or a Bacchanal image, which is incredibly beautiful. I've seen this painting. I believe it was in, I think it's at the National Gallery in London. And then a very complex poster study. So I'm assuming this is a little larger than you'll be working in order to get the sort of flat rendering of, say, the back on the far right-hand corner, or Bacchus's red cloak, right? So it's a very complicated, fairly tight image, but you get the idea. We have Nicolas Poussin, who was a neoclassical painter from the 19th century, doing The Rape of the Innocents. And then it's poster study, especially relating to focusing on the plains. We have a Chardin still life, very beautiful, very humble. He was really the painter of, of simple life. And then we have its poster study. Look at how beautiful that is. And granted, it is not completely faithful to the color arrangements. It is in terms of the structure, the compositional structure, the planes, and the light. See that? Another, a Tiepolo, and then its poster study, a Watteau, the Poirot or the Mime, and then its poster study. Nicolas Poussin, and then its poster study. And then finally, Jean-Dominique Ang, the portrait of Napoleon, and then the poster study, which is far looser. So you've seen a lot of different representations of what a poster study is, but the thing that unifies them all in terms of definition is it's simplified, it is economical, and it is faithful and true to the original composition. So you first have to identify what is it you want to learn from it. Is it about the color? Is it about the light? Is it about the temperature of the color? So as long as you have a faithful representation of the composition and of the general structure of the piece in terms of shapes, I will be very happy with it. So you're going to create 2 poster studies, okay? Through color matching, plain art description, and compositional fidelity, copy a masterwork from European art 1400 to 1860. And I stopped at 1860 because that's sort of the beginnings of Impressionism. And Impressionism isn't necessarily, I wouldn't consider that an old master. I would consider it a new master, modernist masters. Print out at least 4 to choose from at 8.5 by 11. Actually, you can probably print out 2 because of COVID. That's what you're going to come in with next class is 2. But what you should do is send me 4 and let me pick 2. Because more often than not, my students will go on Google and they will not pick an old master. They'll pick some rando from New York or rando from, Utah, who isn't actually an old master. So you're going to have to do your research. Make sure you touch base with me, send me all 4, and then I'll tell you which ones to print out. You will need to bring those on Monday. 8.5 by 11, that's the size of your printer paper, okay? They need to be good prints. Now, what do I mean by good prints? I would go to Walmart and get them printed out. Put them on a flash drive, send them to Walmart, send them to Office Depot, whatever it is in town here, and get them printed out. I want you to work from prints on this and not your phone. Y'all get that? Don't want you to work from your phone. I want you to work around starting at 11 by 14, so smaller, up to 16 by 20. I would really recommend 11 by 14 since we're doing 2 on canvas or panel. It doesn't matter. Simplify the surface structure while maintaining compositional and shapes as a whole. Match color, tone, and value. And you'll be graded on your typical things: paint handling, finish, fidelity to the original, and a plain art description. Make sure you credit your original sources. A lot of students will bring in a print and go, I have no idea who did this. I don't know what it's called. I don't know the year. Do your research. There's a point in me asking you to scrounge. Go to the library. Use the millions of dollars of books we have in it. There is a huge painting collection, and I've been chipping away at it for 11 years now. I guarantee you'll find something if you go and you sit on the floor and look through those big, oversized, beautiful painting books. Questions?